Hello, this is Perry Stone. Don't change the channel. I'm in the land of Israel. I'm standing at the Eastern Gate, right in the heart of an Islamic cemetery, getting ready to bring you an amazing prophecy update. It's going to be great. Stay tuned as we share with you a word from the land of Israel.
Welcome to Manifest, hosted by international evangelist, teacher, and author Perry Stone. On today's program, you will experience a powerful right now word that will change your life forever. Enjoy unique insight into prophetic and practical truth as Perry ministers using biblical word studies, ancient Jewish history, and Hebrew customs that will cause the scriptures to come alive as never before. It's time to feast on fresh manna, so get ready to be blessed and encouraged. And now, here is your host and teacher, Perry Stone.
I'm here with our group in Israel. I want to welcome each of you who may be watching either by tape or by the special program. And I'm in a very, very unique place. I'm in the middle of an Islamic cemetery, a Muslim cemetery, and directly behind me is probably the most famous gate in all the world. It's the Eastern Gate. It sits on the east side of the wall of the city of Jerusalem. The actual gate from the Roman period, or the time of Christ, would be underneath this gate. Several years ago, there was a young archaeologist, a student, who was walking through the cemetery, and the ground was very moist, and he fell into a hole and took some photographs underneath this present gate, and there was all sorts of bones, where bones of people had been buried over the years, and there were two arches underneath this gate. And the arches fit the description of the Roman arches that would have been used back in the Roman period, or the time of Christ. And so probably the gate from Christ's day is underneath this gate. Now you notice that this particular gate is sealed because it was a gate back in Solomon's day. There was a gate here that led into the Solomon's temple. In Herod's day, there was a gate, which again is the gate below this gate, that led into the temple. Now in that particular time frame, which would have been well over 1900 years ago, there was a three-tiered ramp that came from this gate all the way over to the center of the Mount of Olives. And it was very high and very long, and pilgrims would come from the area of Jordan across the Mount of Olives, and they would stand on the Mount of Olives, look and see the beautiful building of the temple, and then walk across this three-tiered ramp into the Eastern Gate, which at that time had wooden doors that had Corinthian bronze. They weren't gold, but they were Corinthian bronze on the outside. You can imagine when the sun was rising over here atop the Mount of Olives and it would hit those doors, how bright that the appearance of those doors were. Of course, this same gate is the gate called Beautiful in Acts chapter 3, where the lame man was healed. And of course, the gate behind us was rebuilt. Some say it was rebuilt about the 11th century in the time of the Crusaders. Others say it was built about 1517 in the time of Solomon the Magnificent, during the time of the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Turkish Empire. And of course, the upper part of the walls that are behind me were rebuilt by Solomon the Magnificent beginning in 1517. It took him a number of years to put the design on. But there are stones. For example, there are some stones directly behind me over here on the left that are very large stones. The very, very large stones are stones that date back to the Roman period. They are what is known as, or what is called, Herodian stones. And so there are stones on this east end of the wall that do date back to the time of the Roman Empire and that time frame. But it's what's behind this gate that's extremely important, because what is behind this gate is the Temple Mount platform. Now I want to share some information with you about this platform. Listen to these scriptures. But unto the place which the Lord your God shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name there, even unto his habitation shall you seek, and there shall you go. Deuteronomy chapter 12 says, and there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there, and there you shall bring all the things that he commands you to do. Deuteronomy chapter 12 also says, but in the place which the Lord shall choose in one of your tribes, thou shalt offer your burnt offerings, and you shall do as I have commanded you. And so three times in Deuteronomy chapter 12, the Lord says he's going to go and bring the people to a place where he will put his name. And then if we look at 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 29, this is 500 years later, it talks about this platform, what we now call the Temple Mount platform, or Mount Moriah. He said, my name shall be there. And then 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 3, I have hallowed this house to put my name. 1 Kings 11, verse 36 says, Jerusalem which I have chosen, there have I put my name. Now, when you go on this platform behind me where the Eastern Gate sits, that Temple Mount platform, several years ago I was reading that the whole area is 26 acres. Now, if you take the name of God in Hebrew, it's 4 Hebrew letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Now, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet have a numerical value. The numerical value of the letter Yud is 10. The numerical value of Hey is 5. It's Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Vav is 6, and Hey is 5. If you total up the numerical value of God's name, which is Yahweh or Yahweh in Hebrew, it totals to 26. Now, oddly enough, the whole platform is 26 acres. God's sacred name totals to 26 in Gematria, or the Hebrew letters, the Hebrew alphabet being translated to numbers. And so God literally has a mountain where He put His name. Now, not only that, but if you look at the shape of the mountain, once again, it forms the shape of the letter Shin. Here is where we are right now, and directly in front of us is the Kidron Valley that comes all the way around to the Valley of Gehinnom. It goes like this. Kidron Valley turns and comes all the way into Gehinnom, or the Valley of Hinnom, and directly in the middle, kind of where the western wall is, above the western wall, is the Tyropian Valley, or the Valley of the Cheesemakers, forming the shape of the letter Shin, which is the 21st letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And I love to show people this. The temple sat on this side. In modern Hebrew, when you have the letter Shin in the Bible, in modern Hebrew, there'll be a dot here or a dot here. The dot on this side makes it a SH sound, like sh. The dot on this side makes it a solid S sound, like s. And so what is interesting is the Holy Temple is on the sh side, and that letter represents Shaddai and the word Shalom. Over here is the Gehenna side, and which is the Greek the Greek word for hell. So that's the shape of the mountain. That's the shape of that particular letter. Now, there's a lot of unusual and unique traditions that are associated with what we call the rock and the mountain here of which we're sitting, and I'd like to take a moment and share some of that information with you. There are sources, in fact, Talmudic sources say, that this stone, where all of this mountain sits, where this wall sits, is known as the foundation stone. And the foundation stone, the peak of it, is actually considered to be inside the Muslim mosque called the Dome of the Rock. From the Talmudic sources we read, the foundation stone was the solid rock and the highest point of the mountain, projecting slightly above the floor of the Holy of Holies, where the ark rested. From this rock, steps led down to the floor of the temple, which stood on a solid platform that was 6 cubits above the general level of the mountain. Now, there's also some traditions that are stated concerning this mountain that I think you'll find interesting. A tradition states that when David began digging for the foundation of the temple, now he didn't build the temple, but there were foundations that were laid, he came across a stone which was the mouth of the abyss. In other words, this stone covered the mouth of the abyss, or the bottomless pit, and it had the holy name of God written on it. Now, it's very possible that from this tradition came a tradition which later developed concerning inside the Islamic mosque, the foundation stone which is there is a cave underneath. As a matter of fact, we have some special video footage that we were permitted to take with this cave. Now, concerning this cave, I want to give you a quote written in 1865 by Charles Warren, who was here in Jerusalem, and it was under the article Surveyor of Jerusalem. Quote, "Beneath the Sakra," and that's the Arabic word for rock, "there is a cave which is entered by descending some steps on the southeast side. A hole has been cut through from the upper surface of the rock into the chamber beneath, and there is a corresponding hole immediately under it, which leads to a drain down to the valley of the Kidron." In other words, back in the time when the temple was here, there was so much blood offering that took place that they had water from twin pools that was actually brought in to the Temple Mount platform, and they would wash the entire platform, and they would push it with brooms, the blood and the water, into a drain, and that drain went into a channel that came right out here in the area of the Kidron Valley. As a matter of fact, there were 2 drains that carried water from the temple, one going into the south and one going toward the west. And after all the blood and the remains of the altar were taken away with the blood, and of course the cleansing process took place with the water, these drains went into the Kidron Valley, and the soil here was so rich because of the blood content. It was like a fertilizer that they sold it to farmers and put the money back in the temple treasury. And I was told years ago that one of the professors from the Hebrew University, he came into the Kidron Valley here, which is directly in front of me on the right of your screen, but to the left of the people, and he sunk a large shaft down into the Kidron Valley, and when he did, he discovered levels where you could actually see certain levels of blood. In other words, he knew how far to go down when he sunk the shaft to discover some of the very interesting things that relate to the time of the temple. Now, here's what's really extremely interesting to me. Inside the dome, that cave that is underneath the Dome of the Rock, if you go in there today, there's large marble slabs that are there, but there's a certain marble slab that even Charles Warren, when he got in there, noticed that when you hit it, it has a hollow sound. And there is a real large hole that's underneath those marble slabs. Now, this is known as the Well of the Souls in Arabic. And there's some very strange traditions. One of the traditions says that whoever goes into the Well of the Souls will never come back and never return. Some say it may be an entrance to the abyss. Others talk about, in fact, Rabbi David ben Zerma lived in Jerusalem in the 1500s, and he talked about this cave that was in this area, and he said ancient rulers sent men to their deaths by casting them into that cave. Now, when you continue to look at this and do some more study about it, in 1911, Parker, and he was a gentleman, Colonel Parker was a gentleman that came to the Holy Land, and he secretly was trying to discover the treasures of the temple. A lot of people don't know this, but there's been hunts for the treasures of the temple going on since all the way back to the Knights Templar. And people have always been intrigued about the treasures of the temple being hid somewhere in Jerusalem. So Colonel Parker came to the Holy Land, and one of the things he wanted to do is he wanted to remove the slabs that are in that cave under the dome. Well, naturally, it's an Islamic site, so he dressed up like a Muslim. He came in late at night, and he began to pry the slabs loose. And when he did, they began to hear him prying the slabs loose, and they came after him and wanted to kill him, but he managed to barely escape for his life. So see, this cave, which is in the dome, is believed by many to be the place where the Ark of the Covenant sat. In fact, recent evidence even shows that there's a certain niche cut which is the exact dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant. And when you go inside, you can see even what appears to be certain natural steps which have been cut leading up to the possible site that back in the time of King Solomon, at least, that may have been the place where the Ark of the Covenant actually sat. Now, what is also interesting is, in my opinion, is this continuous tradition that comes up from time to time, that this is also the entrance to the bottomless pit, which is the word abyss, which is found in the book of Revelation. Chapter 9 actually mentions it on several different places, several different occasions, about the abyss or the bottomless pit. Now, the thing that we want to share with people about this is not just the sacredness of the Temple Mount, not just the fact that this is where Abraham offered Isaac, this is where David built the altar, ladies and gentlemen, that kept the death angel from taking over the land of, actually from destroying Jerusalem back in the book of Samuel, but this is also the place of both Herod's temple and Solomon's temple. Now, this gate, which is directly behind me, is the intriguing part, because this gate is now sealed up with very large blocks of stone. Now, as to far as when it was sealed up, if you study Jewish history, you'll discover some say that in the 11th to 12th century, when the Crusaders were here, they sealed the gate up. And you find out that the basic writings tell you that about 1517 to 1538, Solomon the Magnificent sealed the gate up. Now remember, back in that day, this was not a cemetery at all. This was just a large hill. There were very few, if any, graves here. Now what happened was this. According to tradition, and to my knowledge this is not in writing, but it's been handed down for hundreds of years, that Solomon the Magnificent, who was a Muslim, felt that the Jews believed their Messiah would appear shortly. In fact, there were Jewish people rising to power during the medieval time all the way to the 1800s who said they were the Messiah. So they wanted to seal the gate up because they heard the Jewish Messiah would come through the gate. The second legend says that that's why, one of the reasons why they put the cemetery here, so that the Jewish Messiah would not ever step on a dead grave, he would defile himself, so he would not be willing to open the gate. Now, what is interesting about that is here is an Islamic cemetery. And if you notice how the graves are, the heads face the gate, and the feet face the Mount of Olives. Then on the Jewish cemetery, which is on this side, their feet face the gate, but their head faced the Mount of Olives. And I noticed that, and I said, what's the reason for that? Well, a lot of people don't realize that the Muslims believe that Jesus will appear with the Islamic prophet, the Mahdi, and he'll come to Jerusalem. So they believe somewhere during that time a resurrection takes place. Of course, the Jewish people who are religious believe a resurrection is going to take place as well. So what happens is this: the Jewish people are buried this way so that when the Messiah comes to the Mount of Olives, they will raise up and follow him, and the Muslims are buried this way because they believe they're going to raise up to meet him. So they bury themselves in two different directions here. Now, the interesting thing about the gate that I like to tell you historically from the prophet Ezekiel chapter 44 is with the prediction where the gate would remain closed for a period of time. We shared this with the group just a little earlier on the mountain itself, that twice in history that we know of, this gate was almost open. The bricks were almost removed. The first time was in 1917, and under the Ottoman Turkish Empire, the city of Jerusalem was under the control of the Turks. General Edmund Allenby, who was a general from England and Britain, a Christian general, wanted to take over the Holy Land and liberate it, but he didn't want any bloodshed. So that one night in prayer, he went into his tent and he began to pray, and he began to ask the Lord. He said, how can I take the city without there being problems or difficulties? And he prayed. And he saw a scripture from the prophet Isaiah that says, as birds flying, so the Lord of hosts will defend Jerusalem. Passing over, he will preserve it. And he had an idea. He said, if I fly planes over top of the city, and maybe if I drop notes out and tell them to surrender the city so that there'll be no bloodshed, perhaps they will do it. So he did that. Now, this was 1917. Remember, this was back in the days when people, Turkish people or no one else had seen too many airplanes. So he flew 2 scout planes over the city dropping notes. Now, when the people read the notes in the Arabic language, because they weren't in English, because nobody up here hardly spoke English, because they were Turks and they spoke a different form of the language, not English. At least most of them didn't. But when they read it in their language, it said to surrender Jerusalem or else, and it was signed Allenby. Now, oddly enough, when you sign Allenby in the Aramaic language or the Arabic language or whatever, it's Allah Nebi. And Allah is the Arabic name for God, and Nebi means prophet. So it can read God's prophet, Allah's prophet, Allah Nebi. Not Allenby, but Allah Nebi. So what was weird is when they read this, they decided to surrender the city, and they surrendered the city without firing a shot or without cutting anybody up. In fact, they gave the key to the city to the cook, the British cook. And the British cook said, I don't want the key, and the British cook gave it to Allenby. And so the gate was almost open, but then it wasn't open because God allowed the gate to be spared, and he allowed it to actually change hands from the Turkish Empire, or from the Turks to the British. Now, the second time the gate was almost open is when all this country that we're looking at, all the territory, the Mount of Olives, the gate, etc., belonged to the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan under King Hussein. Now, I was told that about 1967, the end of May, 1st of June, King Hussein had a plan. King Hussein was going to open up this gate right here and pave a road and eventually make a bridge that would come all the way from Jordan, which is in this direction, so that people who wanted to come to the mosque from Jordan or from what we today call the West Bank of Israel, which was then the country of Jordan, could come across the Mount of Olives up here and walk through this beautiful gate, and they would be right up at where the dome was. And what he was going to do was he was going to take the western wall and going to make a 5-star Arab hotel with the inside of the western wall being the wall. So there were some Jewish refugees. He moved out of the area, moved them into Jericho, got them out of the way in preparation. And when they were going to talk about putting the crane in here to remove these large blocks, guess what happened? A war broke out. The 6-day war broke out, in which Israel, at the end of the 6-day war, controlled the city of Jerusalem, tore down the fence that was considered to be no man's land, reunited the east and the west part of the city together, and it became the capital of Israel. Thus, the gate remained closed. Now, on several occasions, there's been some very strange things that have happened at this gate. On one occasion, there was a radical Jewish group that tried to get explosives to blow the gate up with the belief that if they could somehow open the gate, that the Messiah would come back. Believe this or not, there's also been a few flaky Christians. How many know there's some weird people who call themselves Christians? But there's been some flaky Christians from time to time who have even come up here, and they've even said that, you know, somehow the Lord would have them to blow the gate up. Let me just say something to you. The gate will not be blown up by someone that will help bring Jesus back. Here's what will cause the gate to open. Zechariah chapter 14 predicts that when Jesus comes, his feet shall stand that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is eastward in Jerusalem, and the mountain shall cleave in 2 parts, one part to the east and one part to the west. Now, directly in front of me this way is the peak and the top part of the Mount of Olives, and directly this way is the eastern gate. And when the earthquake takes place, I honestly believe this is when this will happen, and takes place at the end of the 7-year tribulation period, at the actual return of Jesus Christ, then this gate that you're looking at, the stones will fall apart, and Christ will actually be able to enter into this gate. And of course, at that time, there'll be a time gap. And I believe from the book of Daniel, there's about a 75-day time gap from the time Christ returns till they actually start the building process of the millennial temple, which is recorded in the book of Ezekiel, beginning right around chapter 40, 41, all the way to chapter 47, 48, toward the end of the book. You have this description of a temple which will be built in the millennium. Now, during that temple, this wall won't even exist, because the walls of the Temple Mount platform itself will expand in 4 directions. The walls will expand in 4 directions. And if I had a picture to show you, you cannot even comprehend nor imagine how large the city of Jerusalem is going to be during that day. Now, what they're going to do, according to Ezekiel, there'll be walls, and there'll be palm trees that'll be carved on those walls. There'll be cherubim that'll be carved on those walls. There'll be 4 gates coming into the city, and there actually will be a group of Levites that will be bringing memorial offerings before the Lord. They'll be bringing, and someone said to me one time, they said, you know, when you read the book of Ezekiel, it talks about bringing an offering before God, and it even mentions in Ezekiel a sin offering. One of the reformers years ago made the statement that that ought to be ripped out of the Bible, because if we are under the blood of Christ and forgiven by the blood of Christ, why do you go back in the millennium to animal sacrifices? I think the answer is very simple. Number one, Jesus is a priest after the order of Melchizedek, meaning he's priest and king. But yet now in heaven, he's the high priest. But when he returns to earth to rule and reign from here, he'll be King of kings and Lord of lords. Therefore, we don't bring him an offering, because we have resurrected bodies. We're part of the rulers. It'll be people who survive the tribulation who will have to bring a memorial offering before him, saying, I acknowledge you as my Lord, and I acknowledge you as King of the earth. And that's why priesthood will be developed again during that time. And so the saints of God in the millennium will be kings and priests and rulers, and we'll rule and reign not only the entire earth with him, but we'll rule and reign as Christ rules from this area, and he reigns from here as well. So there is a great mystery to the Eastern Gate. It's the most intriguing gate in the world and the most intriguing gate in the city of Jerusalem. And the prophecy of Ezekiel 44 goes into detail about this gate. Now, I'm here in Israel with a number of our partners. You know, everybody has an inner circle. Jesus had an inner circle of Peter, James, and John. And some of these are my inner circle partners, some of the dearest friends that we have in all the world. And I want to thank them for joining us here in the land of Israel. But we, some time back, took our camera crew and went through the country of Israel. I mean, we went from top to bottom, from one end to the other, to examine Bible prophecies that are now being fulfilled. We came back to our studio and we edited together some videotapes. And not only do you see the footage of Israel where I'm speaking, but the scriptures come on the screen, and maps come on the screen, and cut-in footage comes on the screen. And it will help you to understand prophecies in the land of Israel. If you love Israel, you love Bible prophecy, then there's no doubt in my mind what you're about to see is going to be a blessing to you. And I'll be right back for a wrap-up in just a moment, but get ready to go to the telephone and call the number on the screen. I'll be right back from here in Jerusalem. People have often asked me, what are my favorite videotapes that the ministry has ever produced? Well, I am holding them right now in my hand, and now we wish to make them available to you, our television audience. They are tapes which we made in the land of Israel with the television crew to document the many prophecies that are taking place in the land of Israel. Now, we're going to take you places where no Christian television program has ever taken you. We had to go off the beaten path. We had to get special permission. We went way out of our way in the northern border of Israel, all the way into the southern part of Israel, to show you where Isaiah 35 is now being fulfilled. Ezekiel 47 is beginning to be fulfilled. Ezekiel 44 is coming to pass. And these are prophecies that Bible scholars say are not supposed to happen until Jesus rules and reigns on the earth, but are now happening in Israel. You're going to see part of them on the videotape, Israel Racing Toward the Second Coming. We're going to be showing you 2,800-year-old prophecies that are now being fulfilled in the land of Israel. It took us several days to tape this, but now you can have it for your home viewing pleasure. And then we have the videotape called 10 Prophecies Soon to Be Fulfilled, Tribulation Birth Pains. Now, we went up into the Golan Heights to show you where Ezekiel 38 and 39 will come to pass, to show you the birds of prey that Ezekiel predicted would be feeding off the flesh of the captains and the kings. We talk about the ghost of Hagar walking again, how the next war in Israel is going to be over water. We also share with you on this tape Elijah and the Temple of Doom, the rebuilding of the Jewish temple. I mean, it's loaded with information. If you will go to the telephone, call the number, and order these 2 videotapes, we're going to include a free bonus gift, which is a beautiful olive wood New Testament. This is a New Testament made with olive wood from the city of Bethlehem. And as we come into the season celebrating Christ's birth, this is my special gift, free gift to you for ordering the video packet. So go to the telephone, call the number on the screen, order by the number that you see, and request this special video packet. 2 videos, 4 hours of teaching, plus the beautiful olive wood New Testament. Looking to hear from you.
To order this week's special offer by Perry Stone, simply go to your phone now and call toll-free 1-888-21-BREAD and request the offer number on the screen. If you enjoy the study of biblical prophecy, then this resource package is a must for your home library. Perry Stone is recognized as one of the leading prophetic ministers in our generation, and this unique prophetic teaching will open the eyes of your understanding to the approaching return of Christ. This exciting and easy-to-understand prophetic package is also an excellent evangelism tool for your unsaved friends and family members. This television offer is for a limited time, so pick up the phone now and call toll-free 1-888-21-BREAD. Operators are standing by to receive your call. When placing your order, be sure and request the offer number on the screen. Again, the toll-free number is 1-888-21-BREAD. Don't wait. Call now.
Okay, we're back. Now, don't forget, I always say this, even though we go off the air, you can write the number down. Take advantage of this several hours of teaching right here on location, and then we go back into our studio and give a wrap-up part for you so that you'll really have a lot of fresh insight and information. You know, sometime back, we did a study on the earthquake fault line on the Mount of Olives. You know, Zechariah 14, verse 4 talks about that. And it just so happens that my personal guide in Israel's brother-in-law is his geological department from Tel Aviv are the ones who discovered the fault line on the Mount of Olives. We even have a map that they gave us that shows all the fault lines of Israel. I heard someone say, well, it really doesn't matter. If Jesus is going to come, it's going to happen anyway. No, but it's so neat to know that this fault line runs in the area the prophet said it was going to run. And he wrote about it like 2,500 years ago. So the tapes that we offer to you are going to be filled with information like that on location where you'll read the scripture, read the prophecy, and then we'll be able to share with you on location here from the land of Israel. I do want to take a moment and share with you from our heart how much we appreciate those of you who are watching the program, and we do want you to begin to tell other people that we're on the air. We would love to be able to move into other cities and other areas and other networks to present the same kind of teaching that you are getting on this program. So write us and let us know that you're watching, and if you feel impressed of the Lord to help us out with airtime, we'd appreciate that very much. But most of all, we want to be able to come into your home and be able each week to present to you not only prophetic messages or prophecy messages, but messages that are right now practical word from God. You see, you can't just have all prophecy. You've got to have practical teaching that tells you how to live and how to overcome. And you can't just have practical teaching. You've got to know prophetic word as well. So we want to bring you a balanced message each week, and we want to hear from you. But my time is about up. Don't forget our series from the land of Israel, prophecy updates from the land will continue next week. Don't miss it. We'll go to a brand new location.